Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and I'm finally here with my April wrap-up. So sorry this is coming a bit late, but would it be my channel without things being posted late? I don't think so. I don't know. So let's get straight into stats because it's my favorite part about filming wrap-ups. So for the month of April, I did go a little crazy. Is it mental health? Is it something else? I don't know. But I did read 20 books. But if you look at the stats from last month, even though I read almost double the books, I didn't really deviate in terms of page count or audiobook count. It's mostly because I read a lot of comics for one of the videos, which I'll get into later. And that's why the number is so high, but the pages are so low. So this month I read a total of 5,417 pages, which averaged out to about 181 pages per day. And because I listened to a lot of them on audio, I did have a total number of 95 hours of audiobooks listened. In regards to the stats, I had 2 5-star books, 10 4-star books, 7 3-star books, and 1 2-star book. That brought our average to about 3.78, which is pretty good. It was almost a 4-star, so I think this was a pretty successful reading month. Then in regards to the gender identity of the authors, we had 17 male authors, so feminism really died this month, and 3 female authors. In regards to the age range, we read from 16 adult books, 2 YA books, and 2 middle grade books. And then just in terms of the format, because I like watching this, I'm definitely seeing a trend this year where I'm reading more audiobooks than physical or ebooks. Like I mentioned, those comic books, they really augmented the stats. I read 8 audiobooks, 10 ebooks, and 2 physical books. So let's get into it. Of course, like with every month, I like to talk about the stuff that I have already previously made content for, just so that you don't have to hear me talk about it again. For the month of April, the Kiss and Tell book club book choice was for The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. This is a romance book club that I host with my friends Zoe, Dorothy, and Jenny. And the live show is over on Dorothy's channel, so I will leave a link down below so you can get all of our thoughts on this book. I, for one, thought it was kind of average and I gave it 3 stars, but you can go watch that video to have more details about how we all felt. Then, of course, if you've been following my channel for this entire year, I did have my Rick Riordan book for the month. Me and my friend Honani are doing an entire read along of all of Rick Riordan's books. And this is the second book, The Throne of Fire, and I have an entire reading vlog dedicated to that I will leave linked up above in the cards. I also have some reading sprints if you would like to go rewatch them, but we're not really talking about the book. But I do provide some content, and that reading vlog will let you know exactly how I felt about this book. Then, of course, we had my video project for the month, which was to read books that remind me of my favorite video games. In this case, it was The Last of Us, and I read, I think, 11 books for that vlog. So I read the first 8 volumes of The Walking Dead that make up the first compendium, the first arc of the series. And that entire series, I would say overall, I gave it like a 4 stars, but I really go into detail about why I like that series and how it compares to The Last of Us. Similarly to the books that were in the vlog, we have What Moves the Dead by T. Kingfisher, The Girl with All the Gifts by M.R. Carey, The Road by Cormac McCarthy, and The Wanderers by Chuck Wendig. So if you would like to see my thoughts on any of those books, I will leave a link again up in the card symbol above of that very long video, but I'm really proud of it and I really like it, so I hope you enjoy it as well. And then we'll get into the other books that I read that I did not put out content for. So the first 3 books are of arcs that I really had to get to this month, and the first of which was And to Put Away Childish Things by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this is kind of a really interesting portal fiction-y type of book that is playing with that idea, sort of like Narnia. And it follows a man named Henry Bodie, who is the grandson of a woman who wrote a beloved childhood series about the delightful world of Underhill. Of course, Henry grows up believing that Underhill is not real until one very, very real day when he is visited by what seems to look like one of the characters out of his grandmother's books. So this is kind of a fantasy horror novella by Adrian Tchaikovsky that I actually really enjoyed. I haven't read anything from him before, but his premises have always really intrigued me, so I wanted to dive into a novella format just to see if he would be an author that I would be down to read. And this made me really intrigued to read from him. This is really a look or kind of an analysis of portal fantasies and what would happen if the children who belonged to these worlds just never showed up. It compares the real fictional works of Tolkien and C.S. Lewis while also cleverly explaining away this very adult male's disappearance in the world because it is centered around COVID happening. Harry is an interesting character because he's so distant from his grandmother's books, so he also behaves and reacts to the characters and to this environment in a way that feels relatable and realistic to a reader who would be faced with this type of imaginary world coming to life. The beginning is a little difficult to get into because Henry is presented with this idea that his grandmother's books are real, and while he really understands what's going on in the world because obviously he grew up with these stories, you as a reader are learning a lot of the world building all at once. But once everything really starts to click into place, Tchaikovsky really created an interesting and horrid world that kept me engaged. And it really impressed me. I'm very interested to dive into more of his work, and knowing that he has such a huge backlist, very interesting for me. So I think it's no surprise that I gave this 4 stars. I really liked it, and I really recommend it if you're interested in portal fantasies as well. Then after that, I read an arc for Funeral Songs for Dying Girls by Sherry Demeline. I really enjoy Sherry Demeline's work. The Marrow Thieves is one of my favorite books of all time, so when I saw that she had an arc available for a YA type of horror book, I definitely wanted to dive into it. This follows a young girl named Winifred who lives on top of a crematorium because her father works at said crematorium and they want to be close to her mom who died when she was younger. However, one summer the crematorium is on the verge of closing, but they hear some very interesting news that might help them. Winifred knows it's because she has been gallivanting throughout the cemetery and sparking some rumors that there is ghosts, that the cemetery is haunted, and the owner of the cemetery wants to take advantage of this. But little does he know that Winifred has actually really summoned a real ghost to help. So as with other Sherry Demeline books that I have read, the writing in this obviously shined. I found that the way that Demeline described Winifred's daily life to be absolutely beautiful, and I felt that within the melancholy attitude that Winifred had for her daily life as well. I loved that there was a huge focus on family relationships and how important it is to feel connected with your community, with your ancestors. Winifred grows as a character because you really see her develop her sense of self while also confronting the future of what her self could be, and the way she goes about this is a major learning lesson throughout the novella. However, despite enjoying this overall larger theme, I really found this novella difficult to get through. There were a lot of missing pieces in the book, and I felt like the characters that surrounded Winifred were really surface level. Except for her aunt, which Winifred develops a closer relationship with and thus develops a closer relationship with her Métis heritage. Her best friend, if we could call him that, her cousin, her dad, and the ghosts that haunt her all really felt underdeveloped, that I just could not care about her relationships with them, and that made it really hard to place myself within the book. I really enjoyed the ending, however, because you could really see how the events of that summer have shaped her as a character, and you come out of the book hoping that Winifred has these really exciting and new experiences as she has developed this new sense of self. So if Sherry Demeline would kind of add her as a character in other books, I think I would be really interested to see where she's at, see what's up. But overall, I gave this a 3 stars, and I would still recommend it because obviously Sherry Demeline's writing is beautiful, and I think if you really like beautiful writing, you will enjoy her work regardless. And then the last arc I read for the month was Blood Depths by Terry J. Benton Walker. So this book is a fantasy novel that follows twins Clement and Christina. They are the kids of a powerful dethroned family in this Louisiana town. They are mourning the death of their father while also taking care of their very sick mother, until one day they find out that her mother isn't sick, she is cursed. They assume she is cursed by someone on the council who is supposed to run them and take care of this magical community, and it is definitely someone who will come for them next. Overall, I really enjoyed the plot of the novel, but I really did have some issues with the narrative style of the book. Firstly, I do really feel like this book was mismarketed. Maybe it's just me, but I thought that this was a historical fantasy, which is something that I absolutely love and why I requested it, because I especially love it in YA. But it was only once I started reading the novel that I realized it was set in the modern day, and so that just threw me off initially from the beginning. However, despite that, like I said, I think the plot was really interesting, and I loved reading about like generational magic and how the author is relating that message to generational trauma and racism, both systemically and amongst individuals. There is also some discussions on magic malpractice, which correlates obviously to the current political debate on gun violence in the US. And Benton Walker also included queer rep throughout the book, which I really appreciated as well. But like I mentioned, I did have issues with the narrative style, and that mainly comes down to the pacing of the book. There was a lot of complex elements that affected the plot, and it made it feel super quick in some instances, and then those moments where those complex dynamics didn't happen made those parts of the book feel really slow. Particularly the moments, unfortunately, where we're meant to show the dynamic between Clément and Christine, because they really felt petty as they were arguing. It didn't feel like it added anything to the overall story of the book, and I think that the novel could have worked well without these moments of infighting. Like, I don't think they affected the plot in any real sort of way. In the end, I gave this 3 stars. I definitely see the potential in Benton Walker's writing, and I still think that overall it is an enjoyable ride. After that, I buddy read Horror Store by Grady Hendrix with a bunch of my booktube friends. This is essentially set up as a sort of IKEA catalog, and the story takes place within this IKEA similar furniture store when the employees start to notice that there are weird things happening overnight, and some of them are kind of selected to stay overnight and see who is affecting the store, but obviously it is more paranormal than they originally expected. So I really like this. This was my first Grady Hendrix, and I had so much fun with this. Firstly, the design of this book is the real star. Like, I think it adds so much to the experience that it is formatted in an IKEA catalog type of way. Each chapter also begins with a picture of a furniture item that they would sell, and a description of that, and obviously that plays into the rest of the horrific stuff as the novel moves forward. And sprinkled throughout the pages are other elements of lost papers from like the manager's comments on the employees and the employee evaluations. This care for design really only added to the spookiness of the book, and it really made the reading experience really interesting. Although the gorier aspects of the novel really only start until the middle, the beginning portion of the book does not slack on the spookiness. I could not read this book until my boyfriend was home, because otherwise I was just imagining about like things in the corners and like things on my furniture, and I did not feel safe in my own house, and I think that that is a real testament to the way that Hendrix writes. Having worked in retail myself, I think Grady Hendrix did a great job at tackling the horrors of working in retail and really playing into that distress of clocking in and working an entire shift. Every character in this book is someone that I have worked with in a store. However, I did have an issue with our main character, Amy, and she is part of the reason that I could not give this book a full 5 stars. I think that if I really liked the main character, this could have been a 5-star experience for me, but I just found her to be extremely judgmental, extremely lazy, and I totally get that that's the point of the character, but I hated reading from her perspective, and I wish that we just read from someone else in the book. Otherwise, this was a really fun experience, like I mentioned, and I gave this a 4 stars. After that, I moved into reading 2 Brandy Sandy works, the first of which was starting a new series with him, which is Alcatraz versus the Evil Librarians. So this is Brandon Sanderson's middle grade series that follows a young boy named Alcatraz Smedry, and one day on his 13th birthday, like with all middle grade books, he receives a gift from parents that he thought he didn't have, and he inherits this bag of sand. He soon learns that this is no ordinary bag of sand, and it is quickly stolen by a group of evil librarians. With the help of his grandfather and the rest of his family, they kind of move together to go to the library and steal the magic sand back. So I was really in between a 3-star and a 4-star for this one. I really enjoyed the overall humor of the book, particularly Alcatraz as main character. It's something I love about middle grade books, is how sarcastic sometimes the main characters can be. I really can see how he can be perceived as annoying by some readers, but I really enjoyed his interjections. It kind of reminded me of Percy Jackson, and the way he worked as this type of like pseudo Sanderson main character, kind of inserting himself. The commentary on fiction and authorial intent was actually quite clever, and it did really make me smirk while reading sometimes. I also really adored Haley Lazo's art throughout the book. It's not just on the main cover, it's really sprinkled throughout the book. Of course, when I'm looking, I can't find any. Like, I just think it's absolutely gorgeous, and I feel like it really added to the book. It didn't feel like a hindrance, and also added to this overall like ethereal overpower that Alcatraz is putting on the book. My one complaint of the novel would be that this plot is a little low stakes, and especially because the main characters of the book have these superpowers that are a little difficult to really understand. I would, however, recommend the audiobook because I did find it fun to listen to and follow along with the images. But another slight little thing I want to mention, and this of course might just be a me thing, but I found it kind of uncomfy to read a book about evil librarians given the current situation in the United States with librarians right now. And one of the main themes of the fact that these librarians are evil is that they spread misinformation, and I think just reading it now made me feel really uncomfy. But I just wanted to mention that just in case. I ended up giving this a 3.5 stars. I still found it fun to read. I still will plan to continue the series. Just a couple of things there that made me a little uncomfy. And then the last book I read was a Cosmere novella. This is Dawn Shard by Brandon Sanderson, obviously. And this is a novella that follows a character named Risen. And Risen is tasked with this request from Queen Navani to sail to this kind of abandoned island called Akina to make sure that it has not fallen to enemy hands. There's something there that they are looking for that I won't get into because if you haven't read the Stormlight Archive, it won't make sense and I don't want to spoil things. So there's something there that Queen Navani needs, and Risen is the one that has one of the best ships, one of the best crews, so she is tasked to go. It is appealing to her because her companion pet named Chiri Chiri seems to have been falling ill, and they can only be found at this island. So Risen thinks that by bringing Chiri Chiri there, she can find sort of a solution to help her get over her sickness. This book also follows Lopin. He is one of the characters from the Stormlight Archive, and I have always really enjoyed him as a character. I really like following his perspective, and it was wonderful to spend time with him, to see how he changed, to see how he grows into this more mature character, knowing that this will be super impactful for the rest of the Stormlight Archive series. But I really loved our main character Risen even more. At first, I was a little apprehensive to read a novella that was completely or felt completely separate from the rest of the series because it is a character not seen before. But I just loved her personality. I loved her companionship with Chiri Chiri, and the way that this novella brings up a new opening for the entire Stormlight Archive was really, really interesting. Although I do still struggle with understanding the differences between shards and Dawn Shard, and I really do look it up every time I finish a Stormlight Archive book. But I'm still not there. I understand kind of stuff that's happening, and without getting to spoilers, that greatly affects someone in this book, obviously, because it's called Dawn Shard, but it always leaves me confused by the end of the books. I did, however, really, really enjoy this, like I said, because I really liked Risen as a main character. I gave this 4.5 stars. It was almost perfect. If I would just understand what the difference between shards and Dawn Shards are, I think I could have liked this a whole lot more. And that's it. Those are all of the books I read in the month of April. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Let me know. And if you would like to follow me on any of my other social medias, I do leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram if you would like to follow me there. And of course, because it is the end of the video, please do not forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. I tell you every time, but it does wonders for my channel. It makes me feel really good. And that's it. I don't know how to end these things, so I will see you next time. Okay, bye.